Hello, good evening, and welcome to another Webster report on this, the 7th September 2025. And we've got a lot to cover as usual. It's trying to draw lines in between them all and see where they fit and see where we've seen this in history before, all this kind of stuff. This is what we're here trying to do. We're trying to, this isn't conspiracy theory stuff. We're talking about real stuff that has happened in the past that is repeating itself and it's been labelled as theories. Reform has just had a so called controversial cardiac surgeon on who's made claims about the jibby jabs that have caused a lot of cardiac issues. And this is now on a forum, on a platform that is vying for so-called leadership in this country, to lead our country. The country that we pay to employ people to run for us, and then we completely neglect the fact that they're spending our money and we don't care what they spend it on. Well, that's why we're in this national debt thing. That's why we're being stupid and paying gas, water, and electric bills when we're meant to be setting them off. But it really does seem a bridge too far for people to calculate. My mum said, work hard, pay your bills. Everybody knows that that's what you must do. But if it's a debt-based economy and you're a creditor, meaning when you've paid your bills, when you've worked, when you've actually paid your taxes, you go back home to your house. Well, you don't pay for those bills there because you allow those taxes to go. And it's basically about balancing books, and they're using a debtor's book to try and balance the creditor's books by putting the creditor's prices up, but they're stealing off the creditor at the same time. Sorry, putting the debtor's prices up, all the shops and the bills. So all our bills go up. Why? Because they deem us as debtors, because we've been taught to act this way. So now we see things that are changing. We see that, somebody who's evaded paying tax and been able to buy a second property and then blame it on a disabled son and things like that and say sorry, they can just resign. They don't have to go to jail. I know people who've gone to jail for a bit less, but it's still all been about debt. So after that brief introduction, Alex, we had a bit of a chat off air. Just on the things that we're touching on now. I mean, I have got some things to bring forward, but we've got to start off in this world, I suppose, because it's this world that's affecting things, but there's an agenda behind it. So when we see cabinet shuffles, when we see the Home Secretary now is a Muslim who is going to be in charge of immigration, who's going to be in charge of borders, the borders that our king says we don't have. We're being what's going on here, mate?
Well, yeah, I think you're talking about imprisonment before, and then you've seen people in prison for a lot less. Well, speaking of the Reform Conference, Lucy Connolly spoke. She was invited to speak. It was really quite an interesting thing. I don't watch much now in terms of current affairs because it's as misleading in some ways, too much information, as it is helpful. But I watched quite a few extracts and sequences from the Reform Party, very glitzy, almost like the New American issue going on. Of course, Farage went over to America and got slated for it, and he was facing all those, particularly those lefty Democrats in Congress being questioned about his association with Musk and Trump. That was quite interesting. But I think, Lucy Connolly was on. And we come back to this theme over and over when I think I might have mentioned in the past that the Greeks are probably, the race and culture that tried in classical Greece to have the most honourable approach to really trying to do democracy. So it really did serve the people. It's very difficult to do. So in our circles, we get representative democracy, which basically means you get a vote every 5 years, and people talk about, when women were given the vote, it's all about the vote as if You know, your vote is this incredible gift that nobody else has in these more oppressive countries. But then once they've given this vote and create this cosmetic democracy, they then do everything in their power to have the Punch and Judy show and to ensure that the choices that you're making are just apparent choices. So the problem that we've got is we've had a political system that's been training us now for a long time to believe, especially those who've got a more skeptical eye, that all of them, as to quote George Galloway, are two rumps of the same arse, as he says in his Scottish accent, or rump, or whatever you want to put it as. So
two cheeks of the same arse.
Yeah, so it's an appropriate metaphor for what he's driving at. Now, I was thinking about this actually earlier on, before coming on the show, and pondering, what do we make of this reform thing? Because whether we see Taylor tonight or not, I'm not sure. But ultimately, he's usually speaking about Trump, and Trump's a highly polarizing figure. Even if you're not a leftist, many non-leftists are suspicious of Trump for precisely the Galloway reasons, without needing any.
Well, Trump is saying that the UK is in trouble, with what the government's doing here, and now they're applying things about arresting people. I mean, I've seen an 89, 90-year-old, let's put the religious stuff aside for 1 second, but this is a woman who's a vicar in a church. She's 90 years old, and they've arrested her for preaching. But it's obviously not going to be for that. It's going to be under some other guise. But what's happening with all the other religions? Nothing, Alex. Why is this specific religion? And I don't do religion, mate. This Christian stuff seems to apply to people that just don't seem to be Christian if we're applying the Bible to what these actions are. So we've got all these people who are shouting, I'm Christian, they're alongside Spartacus. They're just shouting, oh, I'm that. And we don't seem to be that. But there's one thing that unites us, and it's a tribal thing. And if they play on this, and they played it really, really well, but they've also got now they put in the sights, they put targets on every Muslim that lives in this country. And I've known Muslims that have lived here all their life because their families left the tradition and the culture of marrying 6-year-olds and consummating at 9. They've left all that. That was for that time. Even though the Quran doesn't say that, but that's what they believe. If that culture then comes to this country and we see our country changing to their culture, then all of a sudden, everything that they left their own country for is now changing back to their country. Well, why didn't you just stay where you was? Was it all about benefits? Was it all about this? Me and you know loads of Muslims, mate, and they're not like that. Honourable men and women. But there's something not right. There's something nefarious that has been seeped in underneath, and this is the fuel that they are now starting to try and start a racist war and a civil war. And while we're fighting all each other, they're going to come along with their solution. It's nothing new, Alex. It's the same old story. Well, it's like I was listening to, you use a lot of musical metaphors. I was listening to the Cranberries' Zombie yesterday. In your head, we're still fighting. Well, that's where we're at. They've got everybody fighting with each other in the heads when, the Mohammed, who lives 2 doors away, I've spoken to for ages, he's sound. Why am I going to now start hating him? Because my government have got a policy of flooding us with people from third world countries who are backward in their understandings about religion. And, we're thinking that, like, Islam is fundamental Islam. Well, Islam isn't the religion. Islam is like a government of a state. It's no different to, like, communism, socialism. This is why I know communism and Islam fit together really well. They both want the same thing, but they both create the same issues. So, I don't know if Matt, you've said you've not answered any messages, but I turned it off on my phone. But people got the government alert at 3 o'clock this afternoon, Alex,
Yeah.
and they're talking about putting tenders out for mass casualty tents and equipment and stuff. What is going on? What is being planned at this point?
Yeah. Well, it's the thing is, they're feeling something of it. And what I would say is, just coming back to what the point where we sort of segued away, there's political figures. We talk about Trump, Farage, and the debates we often have. Are they just two cheeks of the same rump? Is the whole system compromised? The issue of this really is that you've got these political figures, and everyone across the world, their eyes are glued on, apparently, the political figures, but it's not the political figures. It partially is, but it's the representation of the political figures as well. So loads of people, many commentators have got opinions. So let's call them journalists and reporters and so on. So, and then you've got the broader political class. So you've got the political figure and what they're saying, and then you've got the broader interpretive lens through which they're being filtered. So most people are not getting a neutral or as neutral as possible reporting of what's going on behind the scenes. You're not getting honest investigative journalism. So what people are tending to do is project their own stuff that they read into the situation, a bit like when people eisegetically read their ideas back into the Bible, and then simply using that political figure as a murky reflection of themselves and projecting all their shadow material, if you were a Jungian, onto this political figure. And then so there's like a war going on, but the war that we see outside of us is merely an extension of the war that's going on inside of us. So if you look at the big picture, the whole of the universe and the whole of, culture on this planet, it's a macrocosm. But we as individuals are the ultimate microcosm within the macrocosm. And the same battle that's cosmic from a Christian perspective happening macrocosmically is happening microcosmically within us every minute of every day, with temptations, questions, ideas coming to our minds, little suggestive voices coming into our ears telling us this person's this, that person's that. What does this mean? So in confusion all the time. This is why when Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, there's three different components. But the truth part of that, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. So there's something very liberating about the truth, something objective about the truth that transcends all these interpretations. Now, if you look at people like Farage, for example, you may be going to be suspicious that it's all a set-up job, that Keir Starmer will do his work, that this has been artificially manufactured with flags and nationalism, and it looks like it's a genuine movement, but really it's compromised. So that's one interpretation. However, just linking with something that we spoke about before the show, and I talked about the distinction, before I prayed was in, between the builder, and I prayed the prayer, mentioning the scripture says, unless the Lord builds a house, those that labour in vain. But he's not just the builder. He's the architect. There's a plan. There's a blueprint. And speaking about scales falling from the eyes, somewhat in recent weeks, and examples of that through the scripture, that this is an ongoing theme of distortion and blindness, that this is the kind of thing where we've all got this, so many different opinions, so many different voices, so much human projection from a microcosm perspective. People are in battles and struggles, and they have no anchor, no truth, just feelings, emotions, and disorientation. They project that onto these figures. And what they're seeing out there is a reflection of their own pain. So they're seeing a distorted blueprint, and then they're trying to build according to a distorted blueprint. Now, from a Christian shorthand perspective, we could call that the fall, the fallen world. If we do that, it's just a world out there, but I'm okay. But I'm not okay. I'm part of the problem. I'm viewing it from a distorted perspective. That's why we need truth. So just a dead simple example before I sort of throw it back is if people say, oh, Farage, it's all a set-up job to, cheeks of the same rump. If what Farage is bringing, same with Trump, is based on objective truth in the blueprint, what's happening a lot of the time is people are going, yeah, but it's a con. Because as you're being sold this blueprint, which looks great on paper, is getting people to buy in, problem, reaction, solution, behind the scenes, the puppeteers are actually engineering something else, and they've just all taken us in with a sleight of hand. The answer to that is, yes, maybe, but that's not a reason to shoot these movements down. So Trump, definitely better than Biden. Farage, definitely better than all the other political class, even if the movement's got certain negative and undesirable aspects that we'd see, like the NHS being sold off, bringing fracking back, all the kind of stuff where we'd had some victories against this sort of more corporatist aspect. You win some, you lose some. But generally, what Farage is bringing is something that is more aligned with truth, as most of us truthers see it. And therefore, that's got to be better. We don't write off the truth or a party associated with the truth just because somebody else somewhere along the line may manipulate it. It's still better to have an objective standard of truth that we can all say, yes, that's right. And it would be better if we had honest journalists. And it would be better if we had people like Lucy Connolly speaking on a stage and being able to watch it on mainstream TV rather than YouTube. But for now, we just have to make do with the fact that there is a spreading conscious awareness that there's something profoundly wrong with the system. That doesn't mean that Farage is going to be some political savior, that people will set him up to be. And that's the risk for us. But it's definitely better than what it was before. Farage is better than what came before. And even if they talk about IDs, that was coming in anyway. And there's always political expediency and payoffs when people are doing politicking. Jesus had to address questions about, should we pay taxes to Caesar? Well, it wouldn't have mattered who the person in charge was. Did it charge taxes? So given the world we're living in, we've still got to do those things. It's not a criticism saying, I can't believe we have to pay any taxes at all. If you've got government in and they're supposed to do things with the money that they've generated revenue-wise from your taxes, they should do something with that money. But they need that money. So unless you're an anarchist who says we don't even need governance, and there are a lot of libertarians, philosophically, and anarchists who suggest that we don't need government. But for that to actually be successful in this world, everyone would have to grow up pretty fast. Because at the moment, governments have made us immature for so long that we wouldn't know how to govern ourselves.
Well, those governments that we've not kept check on have now poisoned all our water and getting in food that is labelled with it. I was in the shop the other day, Alex. I looked at coleslaw, I looked at bread, I looked at pita bread, it all had rapeseed oil and veg oil, all of it. So we're now looking at things that are really bad from all aspects that we're paying for. We are funding this. So I get what you're saying about give to Caesar what is Caesar's, because a government, because like I've always said, Al, if I knew that when they took those taxes, that my gas, water, and electric didn't matter now, no matter what I use, it's all sorted, because I'm part of this scheme that funds that aspect of this country. Makes far too much sense. It makes far too much sense that I don't have a shop, so business rates or council tax cannot apply to the property I live in. That makes far too much sense to then understand that we have a national debt that can never be repaired. It must be forgiven because we can never repair it. And that's because of us paying these bills. So you just said these things have got to be paid. I agree. Let's say where we're at, they've got to be paid, but do you know what? Let's expose what you're spending it on. Let's expose the fraud that you're all committing joint enterprise in, because the police arrest people, get paid for it, they get funding for it, the prison service take them in, they don't rehabilitate it, but they get funding for it and they spend as little as possible. And then we churn those lads back out onto the street. And what do? They go and do what they're doing because there's no money out there. So they've created a business from crime. They've created a business from drugs. They've created a business from politics. They've created all these businesses that all these limited companies, particularly since 2008, we can find common sense pre-2008. Certainly pre-2000, Alex, we can find common sense in the justice system. I've had experience pre-2000 of the justice system on jury service. I saw it as I thought, well, apart from a few bad apples, this is what law is meant to be like. This judge is, he was just a brilliant judge. He understood the law, he understood it simply, he could articulate it simply, and he gave the jury instructions. He didn't tell you what you must find out. He said, if you've got a doubt, not guilty. If you apply that into the role of commerce, which is basically martial law that you're standing under, these people can't kowtow to the actual law. And I've seen that. I've spent hours on calls where people have got themselves in situations that there's no way out of it for them, Alex. They've got 100% equity in the property, and they're claiming a debt on them. And what should they do? Well, you're in a position where you can't do anything with it. But then it's about changing this judgment order into a bill of exchange or a promissory note, or getting just an ordinary bank giro attached to an invoice, and being able to change that into a bill of exchange. Can it be done? In theory, yes, Alex. We've had loads of conversations about it, but nobody's done it, and people who are trying it now are offering it as like, yeah, you can do this, which of course you can do it, but that's not being accepted. And for somebody who's got 100% of equity in the property, it's a big risk. That's a lifetime of achievement. They're not well. That's a lifetime to be able to bring all this property together. You've got your family to look after. Everything's stacked in their favour. But all you can do, Alex, is try and point out this fraud bit by bit like we can. Because when you try and saturate people with all the information, it's we know that's difficult anyway. But for some reason, people are not getting out the prams, Alex, over the fact that we should not be paying the bills that we're paying, the bills that we can't pay, the bills that are crippling the economy, crippling people, killing people, Alex. These bills are not applicable to us in this respect, yet they can't get it, or they don't want to get it. I don't know what the answer is anymore. If you can't show them the truth, it's like what I posted. If the truth will kill them, let them die, because I don't know what else to do. I can't do convenient lies anymore.
Yeah, well, it's a Babylonian system, as we know, and
Exactly.
It's one thing. It's one thing to talk about, the great harlot Babylon the Great from Revelation, but to actually understand when you're in the middle of it, how it's working, how you should live in the middle of it. Because to describe it is one thing, and of course, Scripture says, "Come out of there, my people." But you need to fully understand what that is. I mean, it now even extends to the digital world that we're living in, which is one level of removed. I mean, but for the internet, we wouldn't be able to do this show. In theory, reach anybody anywhere on the face, of this earth that we're living on. So we've got to be thankful for those aspects of it, but other aspects of it are being colonized. So reality itself and its perceptual filters are being shaped in ways that many people don't see. And because people don't tend to do testing, they're looking for authority figures. Like, I look at it and I think, right, well, I did my degrees, I've studied, I've researched all my life, I'm a person of integrity. Of course, it doesn't mean that everything I say is going to be correct, but I make diligent effort to make sure that I produce a consistent position, that I give evidence for it, that it's cogent, that people can debate me at any point, challenge a point, and I'll come back with a point to defend my position. Most people either don't want to do that or aren't able to do it in sufficient depth and breadth. Because we don't have enough people who do that, and because life is very pressured and people have, they have time preferences and there are opportunity costs involved in going down certain paths, because every path you go down with finite, limited human bodies, you can't go down the other path you could have gone down if you weren't going down the path you're going down. So once you commit to a path, it's very difficult then to even conceive of being on another one. So when we get on a path, we're also aware that there are lots of other paths that we're not on. Therefore, we don't have direct experience in those areas. And that's when we have to trust the experience, and more to the point, the honesty and integrity of those people having those experiences. Because you can have an experience and deliberately misattribute it, decoy people, con them, sell your experience with charisma. Like all the charismatic leaders have that risk that there'll be powerful influences like Trump and Farage, but it can be all glitz and superficial. People fall into it. So the fact that people have the charisma to make a point cannot be the basis upon which we believe in them. Many people have been led astray by cult leaders into ritual suicide. We know, like, the Jonestown massacre, amongst others, David Koresh. So we've had all this stuff going on. So, what is it that people leading busy lives in a complex modern world would trust in human terms? This is where we come back again to Jesus and the divine blueprint, God's divine blueprint for intervention into a world he created that got corrupted. Because if that's not the ultimate blueprint of truth and God's, rescue mission, then anything else is like it's misty, it's murky, it's an interpretation of an interpretation of an interpretation of a conversation with somebody else who had a slightly different lens on it. And suddenly we're trapped in this inner world, in our own microcosm of nothing but confusion. And you need something that enables us to cut through that. And the question then is, what is the foundation? And we believe it's Scripture. Jesus said, build on these words of mine. It's a solid foundation. You won't go far wrong. The foolish person will build on sand instead. And we see now a total world of sand. And, people don't really know anymore anything other than sand. And of course, when you get sand and you put it in your hand, pardon the poetry, it slips through your fingers, just always finds that little gap. So, we don't want to be in these times building on something that isn't a suitable foundation, but people don't really seem to have within themselves either the skill set or the right sources or the integrity, and we can't trust media. So we are in a difficult position.
It starts at home, doesn't it, Alex? It starts with your parents. You believe what your parents tell you, and you then take that out into the world and you see your peers. And they've all been taught the same thing. Of course you build on sand. Where else would you get your sandcastle? How can you fight for your sandcastle if you've no sand? This is how you build it. You use this pronoun, you use this title, you act in this certain way. And then all of a sudden you think, well, I'm winning. And then all of a sudden, not even a mistake, but something happens and all of a sudden you find yourself before a judge who will not listen to you. What I found out in the in the legal world was the whole point to a hearing was you couldn't be heard. So you had all this manipulation going on. When I saw that armed police could be summoned to somebody asking a question, I thought there's more power here than these people should have. Then when you spread that power to a council that is basically guardians and runners of that town's court system, you then start putting pieces together. And if that council's corrupt, surely all the other councils are. And then you can't get answers to questions. You turn up with remedies that they refuse to listen to. This is not a justice system. There's something gone wrong. Something's fell off. Something's fell off, Alex. Because you can't say I brought you a remedy and then still cry and say I owe you something.
Yeah, we can get. Again, I'm not singling out me director, but in the chat, there's a couple of comments here. I already told you it's all fraud. So basically, that's agreeing what you're saying, what we're saying. So this is the construct. So we're not having anything revealed there that we don't already know. And you're not who you think you are. I don't know how anyone's supposed to decode that. That sounds like this consciousness, this monistic consciousness. We're all this one consciousness, and we just need to peel away this outer layer. It's very Gnostic, and then suddenly this person that we don't know who we are is suddenly revealed, and the divine spark is liberated. It's Gnosticism. But then mixed in, standing Christ's name equals a Christian name only. Well, if that was a solution to everything, yeah, okay, I'll go down and just say, I don't have a cert, I'm Alex. I've got no national insurance number, no card, no nothing. I wouldn't be able to function in this construct. And like you said many times, we step in and we step out. So we've got both of them importance. It's not one or the other.
Yeah, and it's they both run alongside each other. Those things, Alex. When we've been in a courtroom, things like Paul of the family, Paul the son of, all that stuff has been used. And all they did was they got around with it so simply in a courtroom and they went, you're a free man of the land. and everybody just stuck to the free man of the land and wouldn't listen to you, stuck the fingers in their ears. So when people say that it's just easy, you just do this, that's it, that's all you have to do. Don't use the capital names. Don't do this.
Yeah.
You will cause issues for them. A mate of ours has caused issues for DVLA because they wrote back to him without the title in all lowercase, saying that they can't register his car, but he can still MOT it and insure it. But for purposes only known to them, which means they can't register it, so that means the police stuff doesn't actually fall directly onto that property anymore. So it does create issues. But to say that it's that simple, you've never walked this walk then. I'm sorry, but I've done 15 years of this and I've walked it as much as I've talked it.
Yeah.
And if it was that simple, we would have sussed it. I had remedy, Alex. I had remedy. I had a remedy and they refused it. You can't say, well, I've stood there in my Christian name with this check and they wouldn't accept it. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, and it's all part. What is this Babylonian system? It's deceptive, it's serpentine, it's snake-like, and it's going to misrepresent itself. It's going to create a nice, comfortable incubator for us all to live in, a bit like the Matrix movie, where we don't notice that with a frog in the cold water being just raised the temperature. So, the awareness part of that, and the anchors in truth. Truth is not just simple mathematics, because we have to live in this world as it is. This is why I think this debate that we keep coming back to about, Christians, and this idea that, believers were first called Christians, disciples first called Christians at Antioch. But the key is really, it should be disciples. It's just when we're talking to other people, people don't use the word disciple. They think it's like one of these old curiosities. And a lot of people think that a disciple is a follower, but a disciple is a learner. And ultimately, on this narrow path, if you're following Jesus Christ, taking up your cross daily and following him, it's not going to be easy, but you're a learner. It's like you're in an apprenticeship, a constant apprenticeship in this walk with Christ on the narrow path. You are going to get persecuted. You are going to suffer. It isn't going to be easy. You engage with the world just like he did, and that world might tear you apart just like it did him. So it's not a pretty picture we're trying to sell. In that sense, in terms of this world we're living in, you're going to have trouble. But the whole idea is there's a much deeper, resonance change. That's what being born again means. It means, inside yourself on the microcosmic level, this spiritual warfare that's raging out there, and everybody can see it, and everyone's throwing the, cap into the ring or choosing a side. As long as you just see the battle going on outside of yourself, you're kind of effectively saying, but I'm all right, Jack. If only the rest of the world was like me, the world would be a better place. Well, everyone loves to think that. Reality check, tannoy, no, it wouldn't. And ultimately, we all like to think that we're decent people. But then, why are all the baddies out there and I'm a goodie? And all the pedophiles, all the murderers go, oh, well, we're not pedophiles like them, so we're okay. This is the kind of game that humans play. And the battle that's going on out there that we see raging is only a byproduct of what's going on inside of us. And until that changes at that level, the world doesn't change.
And if your interaction, your vibration frequency forms the reality, the fractal part of the reality that you can join with, then it's all that in the battle that we know is going on. It's all that in the battle that sees it and then play out in front of us in the world, where we're battered and we're tested with these things. It's easy to sit on here and from understanding just say, this is how simple it is. We're only, it's when we're born, this birth certificate thing, and this happens and that happens. And we're just not taking up our control. We're not taking up our office. Okay, well, how do we do that? Well, it's easy, just do this. Well, have you done it? If you've done it, come and show us. Come and show everybody. Don't just sit in the shadows and say that you've done something and this is how simple it was. Because in 15 years, Alex, I've seen many people be told many things and then try them, and I've seen them lose everything, mate. That's with thinking that that's all they needed to do. And that isn't what it is. We're not up against that. You're not just going to be able to go and do that. If you are doing that, then come and show us how you've done it. Don't hide. Come and actually tell us. Do a video on it. Do something and show us, expose this evil, because there's no justice. You know, this has happened throughout the ages. We're going to the gates of the city, Alex, and there's no justice there. The judges are all corrupt.
Yeah. Well, in terms of the parallel with most people, you know, you've heard these people say, oh, Jesus was in a scene. You know how people just say things. John the Baptist was likely in a scene. He was in and he had a different lifestyle. He was a Nazarite and, you know, not cutting the beard, not drinking strong wine. So he took that sort of specific vow. But a lot of people just say, we see on the Christian mysticism group, Jesus was in the scene. All right, okay, very nice. But Jesus didn't say to all those people after he ministered to them and then said, right, okay, I'm your way. I'll get on with my itinerant preaching of the gospel of the kingdom. He didn't say, go and join the Essenes. He didn't say, remove yourself. Even though we've got this message, come out of my people, come out of Babylon. And it wasn't quite, you know, what Jesus was doing when he was preaching at that time in his own land. But he didn't say, come out of this construct, go and live in an Essene community, live an ascetic life and don't engage the world. He said in Matthew 28, 19, 20, go out into all the world and preach the gospel. So the difficulty we've got is now in this world where a lot of it's a rearguard action just to survive. We know we have to come out of a corrupted culture. There's an escapist mentality for a lot of us. How do we escape this if we can't turn it around? The dynamics at scale are so inconceivable now that we don't know where to start. This is why people movements like what's happening with reform, when I talked about spontaneous social order and Michael Polanyi compared to more of these sort of piecemeal planned social orders, there's a planned social order versus spontaneous. This is where it's at. So we're struggling to know how to organise. And if you organise and there's a central planner, then government can shut you down. So you need this spontaneous move of God's Spirit. How do we come out of Babylon? Well, Jesus didn't say, you know, become an Essene, take ascetic rites, just, you know, cloister yourself away. So the dilemma for us is to know how to live as active participants in a fallen world at this time in history, making a positive contribution, being salt and light, understanding that we'll be persecuted and misunderstood, which is coming, you know, and giving the right message. Because if we just give a message that says, well, these are the details of the corrupted system. So instead of, this is part of the truth, but somebody could say, okay, it's better to support local economy. It's better to support your local marketplace and go to a supermarket. It's going to cost you a bit more money. That's a healthy strategy to keep your local culture alive. But if you reduce the gospel to that, so what you're kind of saying, we need a counterculture. We need to not fall into these Babylonian systems. We need to keep using cash. All of this is true, but it's a resistance, rearguard action. We're chipping away at the fringe, at the periphery of it. It's the core issue. So the problem that we've got is we've got our core positions, we've got our fundamentals of truth building on the word of God and what Jesus said, but every day we have to get up, get out of bed, and if we're going to interpret love thy neighbour as thyself, well, what neighbour is it? Is it just my next door neighbour? Every minute of every day we've got to apply these beliefs, faith and ideas that we've got into actual practical living. So we don't just want to become some cultish community that, you know, because that's where the Koreshes and Jim Joneses and stuff can come in. So it's very difficult to, you know, not slink away into the shadows and just play I'm all right, Jack myself. It's very difficult. And we're walking a fine line along a narrow ledge, really, to be fully engaged in the world like the gospel commands us. And Jesus said in Matthew 28, 19 and 20. Yet at the same time, to be healthy doing so, because to be exposed to all the toxins, all the stuff, the media's corrupted, you know, sources are corrupted. It's extremely tough. And I think this is why Jesus said in Matthew 24 that because of the increase in lawlessness, the love of most people will grow cold. You know, because in the end times, we're going to be so stretched. There'll be a fearful remnant. And that seems to be something we've come back to. There's always going to be a relatively small and fearful remnant. And then there's going to be lots of those who are distorting truth and leading people astray. Wolves in sheep's clothing, etc., etc. So it ain't easy. And we have to be vigilant all the time, because if we just look outwards and go, oh, look at they're wrong, that's wrong, this ain't right. Oh, look at that, how wrong that is. Like I say, we're saying, well, I must be right then. But it's most important to look at your own foundations first. If this is the problem that we've got in the world, nobody's doing that. I mean, when they're driven by pain and frustration and other stuff, which, you know, is an aspect of sin and fragmentation, when you're not whole within yourself, Jesus preached in the synagogue, Isaiah 61, the year of Jubilee, proclaiming liberation of the captives. What are we captive to? What were Israel captive to? They thought it was Pharaoh. They were captive to themselves. When God liberated them from Pharaoh, they started grumbling against God. So Pharaoh was the external hoodoo bad guy character that they could all blame for the fact that they were not free. But Jesus said,
they enjoyed the sin too much.
Say again, pal.
They enjoyed the sin too much. They blamed Pharaoh for it, but they still enjoyed it.
Precisely. So the problem
Lot's
is
wife was the same.
when God takes all your reasons and your excuses away, well, he made me do it. Pharaoh took my freedom away. That's why I was living in drudgery. It's not me. I'd be all right if these people left me alone. And then God's message just comes through. Well, all right, I've liberated you now. You have to be in the wilderness for 40 years while you actually come to understand that you can't blame Pharaoh anymore, because that's 40 years ago now. So what's the problem now? Because I'm providing for you, pillar of cloud, pillar of fire. What's the problem? Oh, it's your own grumbling heart. Oh, where did that come from? Oh, I can't blame anyone anymore. So you have to go into a wilderness sometimes. And this is a parallel to our own spiritual experience. We have to be sent into the desert, totally cut off in arid conditions, struggling to know where next drink comes from, so that we can't blame other people because it's just me. You know, and ultimately then, that's what Moses did.
This is where we have to ask the questions of, why am I thinking like this? Why am I feeling like this? You know, I told you before the show that we've had more losses in the family this weekend. And it's, how much more can people take? It's just bang, 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 stuff like that. And people would then turn and blame God for that. Because even the scripture says, do I not bring the good? Do I not bring the evil? Well, he has to, because this realm is the realm of good and evil. And we chose to know the good and the bad. How can he not give us the bad and the good? We would never know the difference, because we've been taught to be bad. And it's good, Alex. We think it's good. So this is why we need that truth. Everything is built on sound. So where is the truth? You know, there is a lot of it about this legalistic stuff, about the commercial aspect of it. But I put up on the screen there again, I'm not picking on me, director, but he's telling us all not to be acting in a certain way, yet he's using part of an act that states an individual is protected if no credit agreement has been signed. A credit agreement is not a contract. It's an agreement. And I know loads of people that have signed those agreements. And the fact that you do it online now, it's all based on presumption. So we can't keep playing these silly games by saying this is all you've got to do. Because I've been in these courts. They're happy for you to come in and talk about that. You're still not going out with anything. But if you can claim differently, come and show us. Don't sit around. If you know people who can come and show us, come and do it. Do a video, do anything. But if you keep making claims about stuff that in theory is absolutely correct, you know, I can create a promissory note, Alex, and I can pay for stuff. No, I can't. I can promise to pay. But I can get rid of it, can I? Well, there's a bit more behind it than that. If I can't back up what I'm actually promising to pay, then there's a bit of fraud going on there. So it does come down to some stuff.
Yeah, well, I think Donna Lee, you know, we've seen recently again, she's been in court again. And what's interesting about that is you can use all these things in terms of exposing the Babylonian system. However, in her case, it's a really good example that every few months they'll drag her in, she'll tread water, she'll beat them every time so they don't establish jurisdiction over her. But she doesn't, she's not able to push the tide back by doing so. She's just able to protect herself, and they'll just wear you down by a war of attrition. They'll keep
that's exactly what it is.
They won't let you take the system down. It's impregnable. They can't allow it.
No.
However, I mean, it's an interesting test study. It's a case study. We can see it time and time again. Okay, I can defend off as an individual the beast from getting to me if I know the law inside out. and I execute myself perfectly. Even then, they'll be looking to trip you up at any point. It's perilous existence for your central nervous system, and that's the best, the most learned, the one who's been through the mill can stave it off. But we're not able to move forward because when we focus on the Babylonian system, we are acknowledging the Babylonian system. Like, so for example, the statue that Nebuchadnezzar made to certain dimensions, by even engaging it in a way, we're saying, oh yes, this is the Babylonian system and I'm going to take it on, right? And I can defend myself and not get crushed by it. Yeah, but it's exhausting, isn't it? And you're acknowledging the system by engaging it. So in a sense, you've got to, but once it becomes everything, it becomes like Goliath to you, David. And, you know, unfortunately, in those situations, David's a great metaphor for the reality of God's victory, not ours. But we think, oh, I'm David, he's Goliath. And we forget the God bit. He said, yeah, I choose you as king. This is how it'll be. But we just do the David and Goliath thing without the God bit. And then we end up coming a cropper. So ultimately, again, it's going deeper. Talking about agreements and contracts and so on and so forth. If you've not got one with the Lord, who's the creator of everything, and he signed our escape route through his blood and promised us healing and abundant life. If we've not got that, right, I'd much rather have that than some sort of status by just using my Christian name, basically.
Well, I think you've also got the fact of that all the agreements that we make without us even knowing, because of how we act, because how we've been taught to act, they're all claims on us, Alex. So if at the end of the day we end up in a courtroom, there's claims against you that you've agreed with. So it's when it comes down to those subtleties, your heart's going to be judged. If you've not heard the gospel, and I mean the true gospel, because I think everybody's heard that Jesus died for everybody's sins, but that's not preaching the true gospel. That's not even a sentence describing what has gone on. So I know my parents didn't hear the true gospel, because if they'd heard the true gospel, they would have taught me the true gospel, because they taught me everything else that they'd been taught. My dad was the one who taught me to ask questions. Don't just follow blindly. My mum always bent rules, but my dad said some rules are meant to be broken. What if they're unjust rules? If he'd ask me like a simple thing, say, right, that's your bike, yeah? What if your mate says you can't go out on that bike? Well, that can't happen. But what if he says it's a rule of today between all your mates? They've made a rule that you can't go out on your bike. Are you going to stick to that rule? No, I'm not. Then that's an unjust rule that needs to be broken, doesn't it? So it needs to be challenged. So I was taught to be a rule follower, but bend them a bit. But my dad said, well, maybe when they bend, they need to be broken. But you'll have to check that for yourself, because there's going to be consequences. So I had all this, this foundational information, but I didn't have anything to join it to. But when you see the absolute corruption, when you see the fraud, you've just got to understand this is a fallen world that you're born into. There's nothing meant to be good here. The eventual part where we get detached from God for all eternity, that means there's nothing for you apart from your misery for all eternity, because there's no alternative. And he stretched this bit out in this realm that we decided to come into for one reason or another. It wasn't me or you that decided, Alex. It wasn't our parents. This goes back a long, long, long way, because my bloodline must at least go back to Noah. It must do.
Yeah.
There's only 8 people left and I'm here. I've got to go back there. So there's some reasoning to be done here. And it's the people who... I can't have conversations with people who aren't willing to have that reasoning anymore. They believe something. Well, why do you believe that? We keep trying to raise this question every week. Why do you believe what you believe? Why don't you come on and discuss it? Don't put comments after the chat. Don't send me messages. Don't put stuff in the chat room. If you've got something to share with us, come on and speak about it. I've sent I mean, I don't know what's happened to Taylor tonight. Praise God that everything's okay over his end. But he's not been back in touch. He's not turned up tonight. But I've sent it to another lad who's asked to come on the show, and I've sent it to him for 4 weeks running, and he hasn't turned up. But he asked me to come on the show. So where do you draw the line? Do I keep chasing people? Well, you asked for this. I can't keep doing that.
No.
So we've got to get to a point where the people who are seeing things happening and want to talk about it have got to go through to that next step. All right, come and talk about it. You've got to pay your bills. I get that. So let's go and talk about it.
What I'd say here, though, just to kind of sort, because we're nearly an hour in, I thought maybe just bring Russ in a moment for some comment. It's like, I think one of the things about when we do theology, because we're not just doing, when we say that, we're not saying we're all going to theological college and studying theology as if it's some clinical exercise. We're all doing theology all the time. It's the word about God. It's truths about God. It's all talk and knowledge that we have of God that we share and participate in. So we're all doing theology all the time, whether we like it or not. And if you use the scheme to understand what seems to be largely at stake in this whole picture in the world we're living in now, in terms of the eschaton, the return of Christ, and the already of the kingdom and the not yet the kingdom, is there's two aspects to it in this fallen world now while we wait for the return of Christ and what we do, how active we are, is that it's this world has got elements of a courtroom situation with a legal moral side of everything, right and wrong, righteousness, cosmic battle in terms of these things, and humans part of it, and the infirmary or hospital side of it. Like I said many times, year of Jubilee, Isaiah 61, first message in the synagogue, Jesus healing, by his stripes we're healed, by his scourging, whipping, flogging before he was crucified. We've got to have both aspects. So realistically, we've got that patch-up job where we're wounded and we need to heal, and that's the abundant life, ultimately Jesus promised, that we're not just limping around and that there is no prospect without becoming a prosperity teacher which just wipes it all away and says, oh no, it's not in a fallen world now, the kingdom is just prosperity. We're not saying that, but there also has to be a vision that it's not just all persecution, it's not just all the negative stuff. So it's a fine balancing act, and that's the commitment that God has, from what we can see in scripture, to healing us all as well, to renewing us all, being born again. What does that actually mean? Is it just a statement of faith for correct doctrine and theology so that you're on the right side of the line? Or is it a total reconstitution and reconfiguration of your being by the grace and mercy of God through Jesus Christ, which gives you a new start in this world and the Spirit of God within you, walking in this difficult world, but with joy and resilience? And so it's a massive project, but we've got to have both sides of it. It's yes, there is the judicial side. Yes, there is that prescriptive side, and it's important in the kingdom of God. It's his governance. We need the right governance, the right order, but we also need the merciful, gracious, healing aspects of Jesus' ministry of proclaiming Jubilee to us who are the slaves in a way, that transcended the Hebrews in captivity to Pharaoh, where we stop projecting blame onto the power figure and we say, it's me. I'm the one that needs healing first. So definitely that's what the gospel is targeted to. It's a cosmic redemption in the end, where he redeems all his creation. But we as human beings, the pinnacle of his created order, that we've got to be functioning right. Because when we don't exercise stewardship properly, then we start destroying the environment, then we start killing animals and everything gets out of whack because the template's wrong. So we do need that truth as a schematic, but it needs to be embodied with mercy and healing, wholeness. So we've got to have the courtroom and we've got to have the infirmary working side by side. I don't know if anything that you've prepared, Russ, you can piggyback on the back of that maybe and bring a theological, biblical perspective to it.
Oh, absolutely. I've just been sitting here enjoying the conversation. You guys are definitely cooking with hot grease tonight. So, first, I'd like to say that I think we can all agree that we're not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth. Romans 1:16. And touching on the point made earlier about the elderly lady that was arrested for preaching the gospel, that's a tragedy that hurts my heart to hear. But we know that all that live godly in Christ shall suffer persecution, according to 2 Timothy 3:12. But Jesus also gives us some word of comfort. These things I command you, that ye love one another. If the world hates you, you know that it hated me before it hated you. If ye were of the world would love his own. But because ye are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hateth you. Remember the word that I say unto you, the servant is no greater than his Lord. If they have persecuted me, they will persecute you also. If they have kept my saying, they will keep yours also. But all these things will they do unto you for my name's sake, because they know not him that sent me. If I had not come and spoken unto them, they had not had sin, but now they have no cloak for their sin. He that hateth me hateth my Father also. If I had not done among them the works which none other man did, they had not had sin. But now hath they both seen, and hath both me and my Father. But this cometh to pass, that the word might be fulfilled, that it is written in their law, they hated me without a cause. John 15:17-25. But then again, in John 17, we also hear more words of comfort in the prayer that Jesus prays in the garden. And now, O Father, glorify thou me with thine own self, with the glory which I had with thee before the world was. I have manifested thy name unto the men which thou givest me out of the world. Thine they were, and thou givest them me, and they have kept thy word. Now they have known that all things whatsoever thou hast given me are of thee. For I have given unto them the words which thou gavest me, and they have received them, and have known surely that I come out from thee, and they have believed that thou didst send me. I pray for them. I pray not for the world, but for them which thou hast given me, for they are mine. And all mine are thine, and thine are mine, and I am glorified in them. And now I am no more in the world, but these are in the world, and I come to thee. Holy Father, keep thou thine own name, those whom thou hast given me, that they may be one as we are. While I was with them in the world, I kept them in thy name. Those that thou givest me I have kept, and none of them is lost, but the son of perdition, that the scripture might be fulfilled. And now come I to thee, and these things I speak in the world, that they might have my joy fulfilled in themselves. I have given them thy word, and the world has hated them, because they are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. I pray not I pray not that thou shouldest take them out of the world, but that thou shalt keep them from the evil. They are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. Sanctify them through thy truth. Thy word is truth. As thou hast sent me into the world, even so have I also sent them into the world. And for their sake I sanctify myself, that they also might be sanctified through the truth. Neither pray I for these alone, but for also which shall believe on me through their word, that they all may be one, as thou, Father, art in me, and I in thee, that they all may be one in us, that the world may believe that thou hast sent me. And the glory which thou givest me I have given them, that they may be one, even as we are one, I in them, and thou in me, that they may be made perfect in one, and that the world may know that thou hast sent me, and hast loved them as thou hast loved me. Father, I will that they also, whom thou hast given me, be with me where I am, that they may behold my glory which thou hast given me. For thou lovest me before the foundation of the world. O righteous Father, the world hath not known thee, but I have known thee, and these have known that thou hast sent me. And I have declared unto them thy name, and will declare it, that the love wherewith thou hast loved me may be in them, and I in them. So even though the world may reject us, the world may hate us, it may persecute us, we have the perfect love in Christ. And that perfect love in Christ is what abides us and sees us through all of this. And we know in 2 Corinthians 12:9-10, Paul writes, "And he said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glorify in my infirmities, than the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore I take pleasure in infirmities and approaches and necessities and persecutions and distresses for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong. And our strength, our source of strength is Jesus Christ. So no matter how much they persecute us, we must stand boldly on the gospel. We should not be ashamed of it. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ, and I will proclaim it till my last breath."
Amen.
Amen.
So, Taylor, were you just lurking in the background or what? Welcome to the show.
Hey, sorry I'm a bit late, guys. I had to take care of something. I'm a bit busy today, but it is what it is.
Does anybody else think that sounds like he's murdered somebody and buried them?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it could be Dexter. Could be Dexter. I'm quiet.
I thought you were gonna say something sexual, like I was doing something else.
See, now that's even weirder. Do you see how he went there? That's the
Hey,
secular
no, I think
world.
what you
That's
said
what
is
it
weirder,
does.
man.
That's what it does to people in Washington State, mate.
Oh boy. Yeah. But anyway, how's everyone doing today?
Yeah. The world's falling to bits. The country's in a mess. We're being swamped by debt and by illegal immigrants, and we're now trying to stand up for ourselves, but we're going to end up fighting with each other because that's the way the parties are playing it. But apart from that, everything's great.
Oh, can I just add on that though, Paul? Like what you, because something struck me then when you said being swamped by illegal immigrants. The narrative is, it's a good example of how the narrative is so skewed things that we've got to say, or illegals, illegal immigrants. No, all immigrants. The thing is now, right, we've had what? A population we had of about 57, 58 million until Tony Blair changed the rules. Now we're at 70 million. If you look at adding 12 million in and you don't build the infrastructure of a country of a certain size and there's a housing crisis, it doesn't matter. You could bring in 4 million Martians if you can get hold of them. Like I said last week, bring the whole population of the whole of Ireland to the UK mainland and we'd have infrastructural problems. So it's not even about the status of those people. It's the logistics of our infrastructure that cannot sustain the people, because we're a fairly small island, you know, compared to like Europe, even like the USA, massive area.
But we're being told, Alex, that this is by mistake. They're making mistakes. They're a bad government. They don't know what they're doing. They bloody do know what they're doing. And that's the whole point. You're right. You're completely right. The infrastructure can't handle people just keep coming in. But the problem is we've got an infrastructure that's full of derelict houses that are being built that nobody can afford to buy, but yet 3-bedroomed townhouses, detached townhouses, are being given up to people who are coming here with no ID, nothing, and then we're being told, well, if we all went digital, then we know that you're not one of the immigrants. It's just retarded thinking.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if they're making mistakes, it's retarded. But this is on purpose. This is policy, Alex.
Yeah,
There's
policy,
nothing
from a higher level.
Yeah,
that's the point. But we've got no accountability as a sovereign nation state, because when we left the EU, it was pulling away from external control. European Court of Human Rights, external legislation, World Economic Forum, they're training all the young leaders like Trudeau and Ardern and all these others that they placed, so that there will be a policy level agenda that would dictate to our national government. And then Keir Starmer says, when he's asked, you know, Westminster or Davos straight away, traitor, just stating it openly, nobody bats an eyelid. So he's saying, we want to implement Davos policies at a national level. And then when we say we want to be nationalistic, but not in the sense that they portray it as racist and warlike, we're saying we want national sovereignty to determine ourselves, our borders, so that the people that we elect as politicians at least have a small amount of accountability. When the decisions are made outside of this country and these lands, we are totally disenfranchised. It's not that difficult to work out. It's got nothing to do with racism. It's got everything to on nationalism in that sense, or warmongering. It's everything to do with who's making the decisions. And if our politicians are just puppets, implementing the policies and procedures of people above them, and then no matter what the people do, it doesn't matter. They're steamrolling us. Then the people kick off, and then the police and the judicial system is mobilised against the people, because they're seen as troublemakers resisting the agenda which came from outside these islands. Therefore, to defend against that is to defend against the treason that's happening. And we've seen it also with King Charles, no borders. I mean, he's the sovereign, he's the monarch of this country. And he's saying, oh, yeah, there are no borders. I mean, that should immediately, he should just be removed as king. It's as simple as that.
Well, he did his speech for the Muslims, didn't he? He spoke Arabic and he complimented them, the Quran and all that kind of stuff. Whereas, his mum was Christian, allegedly, whatever that term means to a lot of these people anyway. So we've got...
It's the logic, mate, right? How can he be the king? How can he be the king of this country or these lands and say we have no borders? It's a logical impossibility.
Exactly. But that's also, we have a border patrol. What we have a border patrol for if we've no borders? Who's border patrol going picking up and bringing these 70 to 80 migrants every trip back over, and then giving the French Navy the dinghy and the life jackets back so they can bring another load over? If we stop doing that, we'd be engaged. We wouldn't need to now transfer these people who can't stay in hotels because people have had enough of it. So we'll put them on military bases. Well, what are you going to do on there with them? What do they do on military bases, Alex? There's civil unrest. Oh, there's new people here. We've seen this all before. If you ever remember a TV miniseries called V in the 80s, they're our friends. They came and they helped us. They brought this, they brought that. Well, what are we being set up for here? Don't forget, 23rd of September, it's the rapture. So me and you shouldn't be here after the 23rd of September, mate. All Christians are gone.
I'll see you guys on the 24th.
Yeah.
Here, I'm a prophet. I'll tell you what, there will be no rapture on September 23rd. We will be here on the 24th. Okay, if it comes to pass, then I'm a true prophet of God. God praise and be with me.
Amen. I like the logic. That worked very well. But, all this kind of stuff, though, this crazy stuff is gonna escalate, and we've got to be really vigilant. But it's about discernment as well. I mean, I think when you've got so much confusing stuff going on so many levels right across the board, it's designed to drive people insane and to disorient them and to demoralize them. So, to keep your head about you while all around you the others are losing theirs, it's that whole, epithet. That's what we've got to do. We've got to have that composure and not just follow, the decoy trails, because we know that that's what the enemy does. He's sleight of hand. He comes dressed as an angel of light, aka Lucifer, not Satan. We know who Satan is.
Not Satan.
This Lucifer guy, no.
No, that's a really interesting study. I've just been doing that into the study of Lucifer and marine spirits and things like that. That's interesting. I've got, before we bring Taylor in, have you got stuff to show us, Taylor?
I do.
Okay. Let me just go through some of this stuff, because it won't take me long with this. But remember, we're bearing in mind 2025, Alex, we spoke about the Deagle trends forecaster.
Yeah.
Forecaster that said there'd only be 15 million in the UK left by this
And
year.
99 million in America.
Yeah, so it's interesting that we've got some things that are coming up right now, and we've got to, if they're telling us stuff, let's believe them.
Yeah. Oh, Bittersweet Symphony, Paul.
Exactly. So this is mass fatality temps, mass fatalities, resilience, capabilities. So this is serious stuff. This is really serious stuff that we're doing here. We're talking about 6 years ago, them telling us that there's going to be something going on because they expected populations of all these countries to be depopulated. Well, what would have done that? Everybody must have thought it was war, nuclear or whatever. But from 2021, people went and virtually decided it for them. I don't think they ever believed they'd get everybody. They never needed everybody. It's just like we don't need everybody to make changes. It's only ever been a small amount of people that's made any difference in this world. I mean, look at Jesus and the 12. That shows you just it doesn't take a lot, but you've got to be in reality. You've got to be in reality, and if we're all talking conspiracy theories, yet all my family and friends who are double jabbed are not well, there's more and more each day coming to reckoning that they're not only not well, but they're ill. And I've lost people, Alex, through this stuff, but they can't say the words that it is this. Why? I don't know. Maybe it's admittance of making mistakes. We've got to take responsibility now, mate. We can't keep...
Well, yeah. If you look at it as well, Jesus was very clear. I think it was Matthew 24 again, when he talked about the tribulation. He said if those days had not been shortened, there would have been nobody left on the face of the earth. Now, even then, if you think about at that time, the conception that people had of the earth and its vastness and how many people there were, well, there weren't 8 billion people then. So we're at 8 billion now. And if those days hadn't been shortened, look how much bigger magnitude it's got now in terms of our understanding. 8 billion, wiping most of that. There would have been nobody left on the face of the earth except those days of severe tribulation were shortened. That tells you there's some, we look at the vaccines and stuff and we look at how many have taken it and people are dropping, but not at that level. So it could well be something else that we've not even foreseen as yet, because if you look at what's happening to the water supply on many different levels, microplastics, everything else, there's nanotechnology, 5G towers. So whatever it is, we're all stabbing in the dark and get called conspiracy theorists because we don't know. But the collection of all these things that have been pumped into the atmosphere, the chemicals from the chemtrails coming down, it might just be something that needs an activation of a trigger.
Well, just look at if you look at it from the radiation towers, they turn a frequency on there. Radiation poisoning manifests as flu-like symptoms.
Yeah.
If you've got depleted immune systems, turn that frequency on. You will have mass illness, and they're going to be able to blame it on anything and then offer a solution. And that's the scary bit about this, mate. That's the scary bit about this. Again, we'll just nip onto this one here.
I am very, very overjoyed to see that someone is holding Bill Gates accountable. It's very interesting that he's trying to avoid turning up to this case. What are your thoughts about all of this, and does it hold water?
Yeah, well, first of all, Bill Gates is not a philanthropist. Not only was he instrumental in the distribution and manufacturing of the COVID-19 vaccines and bringing the mRNA platforms to the forefront, he was a key player in that, but he's also 10 years ago, he funded bird flu gain of function research at University of Wisconsin-Madison, where they made H5N1 more transmissible among mammals. That's $10 million. So this guy is a key player in many negative things that could cause catastrophe. And this recent court case is finally a manifestation of what he deserves.
So we look at that, man. We can see that people are exposing this. People are taking it to court, but people aren't seeing it on the mainstream media because we know that narrative is completely covered. So people are just getting on with their lives, but putting flags up now. And it seems to be, sadly, being pointed towards Muslims at every point. You know, we can talk about Islam and fundamentalism and Sharia law and how bad it could be if it all comes into play. But we know people who are Muslims, Alex, who don't believe in this stuff. You know, I think that causes a problem for them within their own religion with these people. And that's why their families left those traditions and those cultures, because something inside them says that's not right. But it isn't what the Quran says, and it's certainly not what the hadiths say is right. So we've got population that is under attack from poisons, from narratives, from ideologies, from economics, and we can't get any justice. And if you're a Christian, you can be arrested for preaching the gospel, but you're fine to do every other religion on the street. But again, it's coming down to it's being pointed at all Muslims. People who can't process things properly and can't articulate. Like I think there was an incident in Liverpool yesterday where there was a stand where they're handing Islamic Muslim pamphlets out and bits and Quran verses, and it was attacked by some people, not Christians, nothing to do with religion, but they were attacked by some people, and the stand was smashed up and stuff, telling them to get out. Well, that's what this agenda's doing. It's pitting us against each other. I know many Muslim people who don't believe in what that is being preached at the higher levels and the most fundamental levels of Islam. But I don't know how you get away from that, because I can't pick bits of the Bible and say those fit with me. I like them, but the bits that don't fit with my sins, I'm going to ignore. That's something you just can't do. So it's the same with the Quran. The Quran says you can't take bits of it. You've got to take it all. So I think all of this now is a melting pot that is bringing religions to fight each other. It's bringing people to fight each other, cultures, traditions. People are fighting for cultures and traditions that they weren't even bothered about, but they think getting a flag out and waving that is going to fix this somehow, or at least make a statement. I don't know. I think we all get to the point where we get into desperation. People know they can't afford to keep paying what they're paying, and something's got to give there. And if all your payments, all your benefits are being given to other people ahead of you, then it's going to cause that friction. I mean, this is 1 + 1, isn't it?
Should be. Let's see what Taylor has to say about 1 + 1 in the States then with Trump.
Well, just let me play this last video. It shouldn't be too long. This is again, it's all incorporating this stuff. It's what we need to. What is going on for the countries that aren't participating in what's going on throughout most of Europe and this country?
One thing I think that...
Why do you think Poland's doing so well? Why do you think President Trump had the Polish president there? Why is Poland's economy growing like crazy? Poland doesn't have a problem selling 30-year bonds. Poland's not going to turf out a government on Monday like the French are. Poland's not heading to a civil war like the English are. Why? Because they sealed their borders, and the EU came and says, "Hey, you're doing this all wrong. You can't do this. You're breaking laws." You know what they told them? Go fuck yourself. We're going to do it. We're going to do it to protect our culture. We're going to protect our civilization. We're going to protect our young people. We're going to protect, wait for it, our country. Why do you think Poland's doing so well? Why do you think President Trump had the Polish president there? Why is Poland's economy growing like crazy? Poland doesn't have a problem. So
that just goes to show what, that all of Europe turned around to Poland and said, you can't do that. And he was asked, the Polish Prime Minister was asked, why are you doing it? And he said, because the people elected us to not allow this culture to come into our country, because we've seen what has been going on everywhere. There are no bombings in our country. There is nothing going on like that. So we're not going to do it. And they wanted to paint him as racist and things like that. So I think that's what we're coming down to. We're being drilled into a civil war, be it between each other or between each other and the government. The more they can divide us, the better. With that being said, welcome tonight, young Taylor. What have you got for us from Kyo?
Well, first of all, let me just address something. You were talking about how by now the world population was supposed to have been greatly reduced. That's what they were saying, and that was originally the plan. But you can thank Trump and the Q team for stopping that by not allowing Hillary to get it in 2016, because if she would have got in, and I mentioned this many times before, it comes back to the Asian pivot. It comes back to the original plan for COVID, the 5-year lockdown, the forced mandatory jab that would be made by pharmaceuticals rather than by the military, and you'd have what's it called, the little Hillary fun camps. You'd have the of course, you'd have massive starvation. Like the lockdown, the 5-year lockdowns alone would have probably killed a huge amount of the world's population, at least in Western countries that went along with it. You would have had what's it called, but by the time we got done with it all, we probably would have had let's just put it this way. None of us would be here right now. None of us would be here right now. We'd either be dead or we would be in a fun camp having, I shouldn't have to say it. So, yeah, that was originally the plan, and thankfully that got stopped. I also found out some time ago that there was originally supposed to be a plan for unleashing a nuclear bomb in Seattle, near where I am. And in order to trigger a false flag with Russia, and back in 2019, but thankfully this was overturned. Now I can't say for certain if this was going to happen or not, because obviously I don't have the plans in hand. But it's kind of like the whole thing of where if you go back before 9/11, you saw a whole bunch of 9/11 comms telling us that, hey, this was going to happen, and it was going to happen on this date. Well, it's kind of like that. So take it or leave it. Depends on what you think. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there that we really have the military to thank for a lot when it comes to not just the United States but worldwide, as this is a worldwide operation. And of course we have these leaders in Europe who are being put onto this position where they're made to make, just like the Democrats, like the far left over here. They're putting themselves in a position where they're making more and more people despise them in order to open up the knowledge to even the dimmest of normies that these people are not your friends, and that they do not have your best interests at heart, that they're hardcore Marxist/communists. And because you have to manufacture consent in order to get people to want change. And that's happening over here in the United States. That's what the fake Biden administration was for. That's what's happening over in Europe, like the UK and France and etc. Germany, etc. And Canada as well.
Are you not describing the Hegelian dialectic there?
Hegelian dialectic. What do you mean?
Have you heard of the Hegelian dialectic?
I've heard of it, but I don't really know the description of it.
It's where something happens, they wait for the public's reaction, and then they offer a solution. So,
yeah.
so you've had years of shite. Now we're being told that Obama's shitting his pants because of the stuff that's coming out about him. We don't know whether to believe it or not, Taylor, because we're seeing a problem that's being presented where I said Trump can't lose this unless it's absolutely fixed. Trump is a walk-in because Biden couldn't run a bath. Everybody seemed to know that Obama was running that country through that administration. And then you get Trump who comes in and he's doing what he said he's doing. We've never had politicians come in and do what they said they're going to do. Nigel Farage is saying similar things over here, Taylor. So we're having the problems created right in front of us in this country. And they're going to wait for our reaction, which is going to be civil unrest. And then they're going to offer us a solution. They're trying to push digital ID like mad over here, mate.
Well, let me just say about Nigel Farage. I'm actually really liking the guy at the moment, and I'm liking the things that he's doing and he's saying. I'm liking that like a few days ago or whatever, he came over here to the U.S. and he was asking for basically help in pushing the idea that the UK government is nothing more than a hardcore communist dictatorship. With its censorship of people's speech and online on Twitter and stuff like that. And it's really going to show just who the good guys really are and who the bad guys are. Because at the end of the day, this is just like This is marketing 101. Keep it simple, stupid. Meaning that you have to keep things simple in order for the public to understand it. Just like in an advertisement, you have to show them the product and then tell them what it does. Play out some silly, nonsensical scenario in order to get people hooked. And then whoever's interested will be interested in buying the product, and it's the same thing here. You have to. It's just like you said, manufacturing consent, and at the end of the day, that's what these last several years have been about. Because unfortunately, over there in Europe, you guys have been far more stretched into this Marxist ideology than we have over here in the West. Because it's been because you guys have been much more closer to the action. After World War II, when Europe was devastated, and we had the Marshall Plan and the IMF, and we had all that stuff come in, we basically rewrote your constitutions. We basically came in and took over your governments, and said that, hey, you guys are now going to become part of the liberal world order, because the cabal, the communists, the Zionist globalists, they didn't want any kind of nationalist governments coming back into Western Europe. And then after the Soviet Union was fell, but intentionally, by the way, by the same globalists, the same people that made the Soviet Union were the same ones that destroyed it in the late 80s, early 90s. They wanted to do the same thing to the Eastern blocs as well. Fortunately, the Eastern Bloc countries, because they were under communism, ironically, because they were under the communist dictatorship for so long, they were much more. It's much more difficult in order to liberalize them and make them believe in this Marxist garbage. Because one thing the communists were not, communists, obviously the communist system is a terrible system, but at the end of the day, what they were not is Marxists. They were not pro LGBT. They were not pro mass immigration. They were none of these things. So as bad as the communist system under, let's say, Stalin or Khrushchev or Yeltsin or whoever was, and it is a terrible system, at the end of the day, it's still not the same terrible system that we have. And that's why Eastern Europe has had a much more difficult time. But anyway, let me go ahead and get to a couple of stuff here, because I feel like that things are because this last week, as usual, has been interesting when we have, especially what's about to go down in Chicago, which after the Washington D.C. incident events, it's really nice to see these events coming out now and happening in real time right in front of us. So let's go ahead and dive into this with the with Trump renaming bringing back the War Department, or rather, changing the Department of Defense into the Department of War, which is what it was named in the pre-Harry Truman days. So up until the end of World War II. It's symbolically significant for two reasons, neither of which have anything to do with warmongering or saber rattling against foreign nations. The first part of this comm is revealed in the article itself, penned by David Sanger, or possibly David Sanger in quotes, which is more likely, aka he's been replaced or put under submission, either or. Quote, in a way it makes perfect sense. This administration is simply taking us back to that period before the Truman era, said Douglas Lute, a career Army officer who played key roles in the National Security Council in the Bush and Obama administrations and served as a U.S. ambassador to NATO. Trump has disassembled the processes, institutions, and the norms that were established after World War II. Emphasis added, end quote. The second element, though not mentioned in this article, was just given to us by Trump himself, or rather the committee handling his Truth Social posts. The Trump administration, Special Ops, is about to go to a sort of kinetic war with the enemy within, the great replay that is. Let's see Truth Social post below. And this is the Truth Social post. I love the smell of deportations in the morning. Chicago about to find out why it's called the Department of War. David Sanger gives us one part of the comm. Trump has undone the post-World War II liberal world order by reestablishing the department to its pre-1949 name. Trump's post threatens war on Chicago. The image depicts him in a U.S. Civil War Union military hat. Trump placed a bust of Abraham Lincoln in the Oval Office. The message here is that Lincoln fought the U.S. Civil War under the invocation of the Insurrection Act. And that's absolutely true. Lincoln declared them the Insurrection Act before the war even started, because that was the only way to keep the secessionists from completely destroying the country. And people like to call Lincoln a tyrant for this. But at the end of the day, this was the Rothschild secret society cabal that was engineering the fall of the United States from within. So continuing, Trump's push to change Department of Defense to War Department would turn back the clock to World War II. And this is from ABC News. In response to Trump's threat, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker stated, quote, the President of the United States is threatening to go to war with an American city, end quote. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, Democrat, wrote in response to Trump's post on social media. This is not a joke, the governor added. This is not normal. Donald Trump isn't a strong man. He's a sacred man. He's a scared man. Illinois won't be intimidated by a wannabe dictator, end quote. With Pritzker and the Chicago mayor Brandon Johnson openly declaring their intention to, quote-unquote, resist the deportation crackdown, the growing grassroots protests, and the deployment of the National Guard now accepted as the new normal, the chess pieces are in place. All that is necessary is to take the great replay to the next level is some sort of incident. Where, how, and when, we cannot predict. But if Trump's post is an indicator, and the language seems very straightforward, the situation in Chicago would turn ugly. Could turn ugly. Staged, of course. Popcorn ready. Chicago mayor signs order aimed at resisting Trump's planned immigration crackdown. Trump's leaked plan to deploy the Texas National Guard against Illinois will tear apart the Union. If it goes forward, it will plunge the country into an unprecedented constitutional crisis. Pritzker, quote-unquote, and Johnson, quote-unquote, are executing their assigned acting roles flawlessly. It is being reported that the National Guard units to be used in Chicago will be from red state Texas. And, you know, people have been talking about this, saying that, hey, how is it possible that Trump could unleash the military in Chicago under normal circumstances? Because technically habeas corpus exists. But under the Insurrection Act, habeas corpus is suspended. That's what allows Trump to be able to do this. And that's what I suspect will be optically declared very soon, just as he had truly, really declared on January 6th. That was the whole point of January 6th. So what's happening now in Chicago is the perfect lead-in to this takedown of this massive immigration crisis, but also to take down these mayors and governors who are actively fighting against the union and are doing everything they can in order to destroy America from within. And that's really what the Trump administration, or I should say the Q team, is fighting against right now, is getting rid of all of these subversive elements within our country that are still there. You know, the bit players, not the Bill Gates or any of those people. Those people are already taken care of, but rather the bit players. You know, your state governors, your town, your mayors, etc., etc. These people who have over the last 4 years.
Who's the Bill Gates? Taylor, who's the Bill Gates who's been summoned to a Netherlands court in that article I posted? What Bill Gates is that? Is it just a non-entity Bill Gates, or?
Yeah, it's a replacement Bill Gates, because clearly that man was replaced a long time ago during the COVID lockdowns. A lot of these people were taken down during the COVID lockdown. That was actually one of the good things to come out of the COVID lockdowns, was that since everybody was at home and nobody was out, it gave the military the perfect chance to grab these people up and take them to Gitmo and either execute them or put them under submission. So at the end of the day, a lot of these public figures, these deep state actors who we know have been a part of this for a long time, they're being exposed. And even if their actual personages have been taken care of, the point is that in a public optical setting, they have to be exposed for what they truly are. They have to be shunned to society. Just like Tony Fauci has been over these last couple of years, how he's been exposed more and more as being a corrupt quack. And speaking of big pharma, I'm not sure if you saw the clip of the governor. I don't think it was Ron DeSantis. I forget who it was, but it was someone in Florida who announced that they will be getting rid of all vaccine mandates. For anyone in general, all vaccine mandates are being taken out in Florida.
Yeah,
it's an absolutely fantastic move, as we know. Not to mention also the fact that Robert.
Hang on. Was it not fantastic when Donald Trump put the vaccines onto Operation Warp Speed to get them all out there? Now they're saying there's been damage done. We're seeing this being reported, and we're seeing physicians come out. I think there's a couple who lost their jobs. They're in court now over stuff with Pfizer. So it's all been proven that it shouldn't have happened, but Trump supported it all then. So what was the guys behind that if now he's against it? Because all it seems like to us over here, Taylor, is a Punch and Judy show. Oh, no, it isn't. Oh, yes, it is. Oh, no, it's that.
Well, I mean, and, I've gone over this before, but I'll say it again. Operation Warp Speed was a military action in order to remove the COVID psyop from the deep state and take control of it and take it down in a controlled manner. Because at the end of the day, what Trump said was that Operation Warp Speed saved the world. He didn't say the vaccine saved the world. He said Operation Warp Speed did. And that's a very important difference in wording there. Because what he's saying is that Operation Warp Speed took down the cabal's intent, which again was, as I said, the original idea, the 5-year lockdowns, the forced mandatory jab that would have taken care of a lot of the population.
Well, hang on. Trump said that he was going to roll out the military so everybody could get those vaccinations.
Yeah. So, he said that, yes. And the reason he said that was because, unfortunately, and this is part of the reason why he had to push for the vaccine to begin with, or at least a controlled, reduced version of what was planned, was because people were just so shitting their pants so hard that there was literally no other choice. Because a lot of people don't seem to remember this, but at first Trump said to take ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine. He said that the COVID was just like the flu, it was nothing. But then the media destroyed him for it. No one believed him. So because at the time the media was still the deep state was still incredibly powerful at the time, they still had control of the media. And so at that point, what else is Trump supposed to do? The only thing he can do for these shit scared normies is to give them what they want, which is their magical vaccine in order to break the lockdowns. Otherwise, we would have had the 5-year lockdowns, which was originally planned. By rolling out, by having this warp speed, quote unquote, vaccine come out, it broke the blockade, and it gave people what they wanted, and it got them to be willing to come out of their houses. Because unfortunately, as it stood, people were so scared shitless that the only way in order to satisfy them and reopen the economy was to give them what they wanted. And that's just the unfortunate part of it. Now, he did, and also he didn't make it mandatory to take it as well. That was unfortunately up to the individual governors and states and employers. They made the decision themselves. Trump never forced anyone to take any sort of vaccine. So that's the truth about Operation Warp Speed. And that's why I'm thankful that it happened, because if it didn't, again, we probably wouldn't be here right now, because COVID was originally supposed to happen under Hillary. That was originally the plan, as Fauci even hinted at right when Trump got in. The reason they did it in 2020 was because they wanted to get Trump out of office, because it was an election year. They wanted to get their mail-in ballots installed, and they wanted to get Trump out so they could get their people in. But thankfully, what they didn't realize was they fell right into the military's trap, because they knew COVID was coming. They couldn't stop it, but they knew it was coming, and they did everything they could in order to minimize the damage as much as possible. And as bad as it was, and it was very bad, it would have been a million times worse had the original plan had actually gone off. And that's why, and that's really at the end of the day what Operation Warp Speed was all about. So when Trump says that he's proud of what Operation Warp Speed accomplished, he really he means that in a sincere way, just not in the typical way that you would think, which is, getting people their vaccines and getting them well. That's not what he means at all. So at the end of the day, if you really want to blame anyone for forcing any form of a lockdown to happen, blame the shit scared normies who were so damn brainwashed that they can't think for themselves. I mean, for fuck's sakes, pardon my language, there's still people running around with masks even now. I'm sure you see it as well in the UK. There are still some people running around with masks in stores and stuff. So that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with such brainwashed normies that there's not, that honestly there comes a point where there's only so much you can do. And that's what we're dealing with. That's what these last 4 years have been all about, the fake Biden years, to wake people up.
So were they put in place? Was Biden put in place to wake people up?
Well, first of all, it's a fake Biden. I've already gone over this many times. It's a fake Biden. The real Biden was executed years ago for crimes against humanity, for children, all that stuff. I mean, you can even tell this by looking at him. Does he even look the same? He doesn't even look the same as he used to. Not to mention also the fact that there's also several others, like the governor of New York, Cuomo, the governor of New Jersey. I forget what his or her name was. There's several of these people. Over the last several years, we've had several of these mainstream articles coming out and say this person looks very different. Could it be plastic surgery? That's basically a comm telling you this person's been replaced. But anyway, so the point of the fake Biden years was, yes, to wake people up, because what the fake Biden administration was all about was, number one, getting some initiatives passed that wouldn't have worked under Trump at the time, because people were still so against Trump that if he was in, several of these things wouldn't have been able to happen, such as such as what happened with the Paris Climate Accords, etc. So. And the thing is that Biden, under the fake Biden years, we were given a controlled demo version of what the original plan by the deep state was, which was a complete new world order. Massive, we think the immigration crisis is bad, which it is, of course, but the borders would have been completely gotten rid of. There would have been no borders left. The crime would have completely would have been 100 times worse than it is currently, etc., etc. We got a play acted version of a rundown, what's it we're looking for, a lesser version of what was originally planned, and it was completely controlled in order to wake people up, because you cannot tell the people, you have to show them. Because you and I both know, if we go around telling people, oh, 9/11 was an inside job, oh, COVID was a hoax, oh, the jab is poison, etc., etc., people don't believe you. because they have a fundamental different worldview than you do. So no matter what you say to them or present to them, it doesn't matter. But the point, so what they have to do is they have to experience these things firsthand for themselves, and then come to a grassroots realization in of themselves that they have been played, and that the left is demonic, and that they're full of Satanists, and the Democrat Party and all these liberal world leaders are nothing more than traitors that need to be gotten rid of. And that's really what's happened, because over the last 4 years, so many people have turned to the right. I've turned back to common sense. Millions and millions of people. If you just look at the poll numbers as a result. We even in swing states here in the United States, we've had millions and millions of people moving from places like California and Oregon to places like Texas and Florida, and those states which were light purple, they were leaning, they were going towards blue. They're now hardcore red, because of the fact that that the public has become so woken up. And even in these hard blue districts and states, millions and millions of people have turned Republican and have went against the Democrats' Marxist Party. That's what people like AOC and all them are all about. Get these people to reveal their communism on their sleeve, show it off to the public. So at the end of the day, that's what it was all about. And we've had such great results. So many people now have turned to common sense and have turned against the establishment. And that's exactly what we want. Sorry about the bit of a long-winded answer, but
it's an answer, mate. Like I said, this is all about questions right now. We've only got questions over here in this country at the minute, and the stuff that's happening it's unbelievable to see that people can see it now. People want to do something, they don't know what to do, so they're all going off in different directions. And the establishment have always took great solace in the fact that people can't organise, they can't unite, they can't come together. And putting flags up and waving flags, there's an interesting concept. I mean, I haven't got time to go into it now, but when it comes to waving a flag, ours is, we use the Union Jack for the UK and we use the St George's for England. But if you've got something like this, Taylor, now it's difficult to work out all these names, but if anybody's seen things like Game of Thrones, where we have houses that all have their own insignia, all these royal crests and the markings on it, no matter how simple you think it is, from a lion not being chained to the ground, and on others the lion being chained. These are all things that mean something. So we see there's a couple of flags on here that could be St George's. They always call the cops.
I don't even know if that was cops or if that was a fire engine or what, but it was something.
It's got to be. Hey, it's got to be one of your ends. It's not. They're not our cops then.
Something. Yeah. It was definitely coming from outside my house. Yeah, but I'm just saying, man. I don't know.
Hang on. Let me finish because they could be coming for you. But if you see here, we've got flags here that have got the red cross on, and they're for houses. So when you see the eagle with two heads, and you see that Jesus is in the middle of this, you can see the fighting that's going on. We could put white hats and black hats on these people here, Taylor. That's what we're getting at. This is very deep. This is very old. So the ones who appear as saviours, even Satan comes as an angel of light. We've got to be a little bit suspicious. Is that fair, mate?
Well, I would just say that at the end of the day, you could also is that at the end of the day, anything can happen. But all you have to do is just look at the presidents and look at the and just look at the results, because a man can talk as much as he wants, but actions and results are what matters. And once someone has proven themselves as worthy of trust, it's a good idea to actually to put some faith. And that doesn't mean worship them like a god or something, but just put some faith in it. And at the end of the day, all we can do as a population is just try to do what we can in our own little circles, and in order to just keep ourselves sane, but as well as the fact of be willing to accept the idea that there is that there is good guys doing what they are in order to take down this new world order. Because at the end of the day, really, I would say, even just as God written in the world, good always triumphs over evil. It's a bit of a cliche, but it is true at the end. Even if it takes a long time, good always triumphs over evil. Now, all this time, for these for centuries, we've been given, a lot of these countries have been infiltrated by agents taking over their political parties and then presenting themselves as being against each other when in fact they were always on the same side. But in retrospect, if you look throughout history, you can easily spot that just by going through the events that transpired over the decades and be able to tell, hey, nothing changes no matter which party gets in power. But nowadays that's different, because like you said, every politician says that they're going to do something and it never gets done. But that's different now, because at the end of the day, these aren't politicians we're dealing with. This is the military. And they're not in it for... and also, let me just say this. Right now, back to the manufacturing consent angle that I was talking about. Now, because of the last 4 years, everyone and their mama is, like, except for the hardcore lefties, are against the massive immigration problem. And the drug epidemic as well. Meanwhile, you have the Q-controlled leftist media, like your CNNs, your MSNBCs, etc., that are under military control, but they have to play up the optics in order to be able to play out for their viewers. And these agencies, like your New York Times, etc., they are on the 20 side of 80-20 issues. Any kind of smart politician would always know you don't do that. You don't side with the minority. You don't side with the extremists, because that ends up hurting you politically. You have to win national elections, and at the end of the day, that's exactly what the leftist media has done. They're pro crime, they're pro drugs. They're 100% against Trump sending in the National Guard to Chicago in order to clean up the crime, and that's turning the people against the media, because I'm sure their ratings are in the pits. They're in like the 20%, etc. NBC is dumping MSNBC, and they're changing their name to MS Now. Meanwhile, CNN is going through a similar situation at the moment, and it's a fundamental transformation of our country that honestly I never thought we would see in our lifetime. We have Israel being attacked by both the left and the right. We have the globalists being exposed for the world to see. We have the mainstream media dying in real time. We have these politicians as looking like complete jokes to the public, and we have religion coming back. And by religion, I mean not this garbage controlled leftist religion like your LGBT and all that stuff. I'm talking about actual, like, bringing back Christianity and stuff to different places like Louisiana and Texas and Florida. And it's I'm sure Russ, I think Russ, you mentioned this before as well, that under the Trump administration, Christianity back to a lot of people.
Yeah, so it was an ongoing fear among a lot of us Christians, especially us conservative Christians, that we wouldn't be able to practice our religion freely anymore. And we saw this start to rise during the Obama administration, when people were getting arrested for cakes, clergy was getting arrested for not officiating certain weddings, and what have you. And we also saw a lot of persecution of Christians, even in the United States. Churches were being vandalized, not only regarding the marriage situation, but also regarding the pro-life movement as well. So we had
Rainbow
some
flags?
fears going on there, and then when Trump took office again, he signed executive orders protecting the religious liberty of Christians, especially, and prevented us from being prevented anti-Christian bias in the realm of federal government. So it gave us a little bit of backing there, but also he established a faith office, which I'm not in full agreement with who he put in charge with it, but I do see that it can benefit us moving forward as positions and titles change and new people come in, and some of the people that are in there now are pushed out. But in reality, what we have is a leftist ideology to where they preach inclusion, um, except for inclusion of the Christians, and that's dangerous because they want to be inclusive to ideologies like Islam, which at its core is a theocracy. It is a religion that rules by government authority, and honestly, the principles of the Islamic rule, Sharia law, doesn't really meld well with what we in the West perceive as liberty and freedom. So they've created kind of a shoot themselves in the foot situation. So now we have liberal leftists, gays for Palestine, out here rooting in the streets, flying gay flags for Islam and Palestine, yet they don't understand that under Sharia law they would be put to death. So they're literally out here protesting for their own executions, and that's how I see it. So
We have
it's really strange.
we're having that over here as well, mate. I mean, there was a guy on a bike waving an LGBTQ plus QA plus flag, and he was at a pro-Palestinian march, and they virtually attacked him. They told him where to go, and he was trying to be for pro-Palestine, the gays for Palestine type thing, and they attacked him. So people, you're right. People don't know what they're believing in, and they don't know what to do with it. So
That's
this
because
is
they're below level. Like how this works is they're like below average intelligence. So they rely on voices that they find authoritative to guide them and lead them in
yeah,
things that they don't understand. So they lean on to these leftist leaders and stuff that they idolize and basically worship. And they
and
let
that's the
them guide
problem.
them. They let the news media do the thinking for them. They let popular culture do the thinking for them. Instead of stepping out and being brave about themselves and do the thinking for themselves, they would rather
Yeah,
let people do the thinking for them. So just as Jesus said, the blind leadeth the blind, they both fall into the ditch. And that's exactly what we see going on right now with the leftist policies and ideologies. I think that what's happening in the UK now would have been the inevitable fate of the United States right now if not Trump had stepped in when he did. We would be having the exact same situation right now with the American flag, with Christian flags, with Christian iconography
definitely,
that you guys are
definitely,
having right now because it's
definitely.
one unified agenda. So the same left that's over there is the same left that's over here because they all preach the same exact thing. Birds of a feather fly together.
Yep, and plus we already I mean, just look what we already have. We already have these hardcore leftists going and burning American flags in the streets already, which is turning in, which I believe Trump is now signing into law that that's a crime that you can go to jail for burning the American flag.
Yeah, he has. Yeah, yeah, he has. Well,
Yeah, it's a
that's
crazy look. You got people crossing our southern border illegally, coming here, and then protesting in the streets and burning our flags. Like, optics is everything, and that looks like an invasion. That doesn't look like you're seeking asylum. That looks like you're trying to invade our country.
Oh
what
So,
yeah,
does it?
I
There again, Ross.
want the
What does it look
military to
like?
do, I say go for it.
What does it look like, Ross? Though, when those people who are invading my country are only coming halfway across the channel, and then we're going picking them up and then taking them to these hotels. That's even, you're looking at stuff even worse. Anyway, lads, thanks for that. You've summed it up really well between yourselves there. I noticed while you were talking, Russ, Taylor's head was nodding all the time, so I know that. I
He was
know
making
that
good points. He was right.
exactly. Well, that's what we're here for. We're here to ask these hard questions. We're here to ask questions of why do you believe what you believe? Don't just believe it. Ask questions. Alex, have you got any final thoughts?
No, I've just been having this conversation a little bit in the chat with James. Has come out with some interesting positions, and I think it. I was just typing a response, which I'll finish off in a minute. But yeah, it's good to have these types of questions because the bottom line is honesty. You can't do any more than be honest. First of all, you got to be honest with yourself. So everyone was born socialized by parents, and some parents did better than other parents. We're all running survival dramas if at an early age the capacity for us to survive is threatened. It gets into your central nervous system. It makes you ask questions in a certain way. If you don't get protections, just look in the natural world with, small creatures, antelopes, even a little lion cub. It's defenseless without the parenting in the early days. So we've all been dealt a hand. We all get to a point where, a bit like Adam and Eve, their eyes are opened. We can see that just as the originating position that describes as the archetypes of man and woman, number one in the garden. But it also applies to us in our life cycles. We start off innocent when we're born, and a certain point comes when we face that same moment that Adam and Eve faced. And our eyes are open. We see the world for what it is, and we become aware of ourselves and knowledge and things outside ourselves. That's a very confusing moment. And just talking about children and being socialized, we talked a little bit about the problem of evil and why bad things happen. And James was asking, well, why does God not stop that happening? And I talked about free will. We learn through suffering. If we were always, wrapped in cotton wool, or people who are always given things by the parents because the parents say, I'll do good things for my child. I'll make sure that I correct all that hardship I had when I was growing up, and I'll just give them and give them, give them. And then you spoil the child because the child has had no contrast. It's had everything made easy for it. There's no hardship, no challenge. If we don't have challenge in life, if we don't have the sunshine and the rain, it's difficult to become a whole human being in a world such as this. So I found it quite interesting that some of these comments that James put in, because they are very honest questions. You've got to ask these questions. We don't trust many sources today. So why would you trust the Bible? Then you're into difficult territory, epistemological, or why would you? Well, you've got to read it. And when you read it, is it the statements that confirm its truth, or is it the impression that those statements make upon your soul? Can you sense something authentically different than when you read other texts? Is God speaking to you? And then if you're still not sure, then it's like, well, all right, then I'm going to reach out, I'm going to cry, I'm going to pray. I don't need to tell anybody else. I'm going to cry out to this entity that I'm a bit skeptical here. Come on, can you show me? I'm not testing you, but seeing is believing. Even doubting Thomas said, I'm not going to believe it unless I see the marks. And then suddenly Jesus offered the marks, said, I don't need it. No, that's it. So even then, he needed what he didn't think he needed, or he didn't need what he thought he needed. And you can play it whatever way you want to go, but he had an experience because he was engaging. So the point is, if you have integrity and you cry out and you wrestle, Jacob wrestled the angel, ultimately you've got to direct it as something. I was talking about a supermarket trolley. If you go in for several hours into the supermarket, come out, don't buy anything because you're indecisive. You've got nothing in your trolley. This is the world we're living in now. Radical skepticism about everything means you can't put your weight on anything. There's no trust, no nothing. So people might say, oh, you're only trusting in God because you can't deal with certainty and how challenging life is. Okay, they can believe that if they want. They can claim it's a psychological crutch. But what else have you got? If you don't read the scripture, if you don't respond, if you don't then test the claim and cry out, what can you do? And it's not about the facts of life. It's about making that decision, because there are many things that look one way, but it's surface. So there's always deeper that you need to go. So at some point, you've got to have an honest conversation with yourself. Give it to God if you believe there could be a God out there, and see what comes back. Sorry, Taylor, you were going to say.
I was going to say that's exactly what I have to say about the Q posts. And people that want to mock them and say, "Oh, you're a Q-tar," oh, Q is hopium and all that stuff. It's like, well, these people haven't actually read them. haven't read any of the posts. They haven't done any of the research. They haven't watched any anon accounts. They just hear some hearsay from the mainstream media or some regular alternative media person like Alex Jones or something, and just assume it's nonsense without actually doing their own research. And that's the problem that we have with a lot of these people. And it's not just about Q or God; it's about a lot of subjects. People don't do their own homework. They just take what someone else says and just roll with it, and that's the problem.
It's what me and Alex refer to as parroting.
Yes,
that's exactly what we're on about. Anyway, guys, we've done 2 hours. So thanks for your summings up. I've noticed you've responded to me director, Taylor. Me director contacted me several times asking me to ask you questions. So I hope you don't mind, but I passed your email on to him.
that's fine. That's fine. I don't care.
So I don't know if he is. He obviously hasn't contacted you yet, but obviously now me director, the invitation's there. You don't need me. Taylor is my mate, but you don't need to ask me to ask him questions. You can actually direct it straight to him now.
Yeah, you can ask me. You can ask me whatever you want, man.
There you go. He's a good talker as well.
I can be. It depends. It depends on the topic, and it depends on the conversation. Because sometimes I can be silent as a mule. Other times I can go on and on and on. It depends.
Well, I've only ever known you go on and on and on and on. Anyway.
Do you remember the streams I used to do back on my old channel when I was just talking by myself and I would be so silent for such a long time?
Yes. I also know that you used to come on Raconteurs News and just go blah, 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 on. We must have tried to end the show half a dozen times one night. No, just one more thing. You're like, it's worse than Columbo.
I've never seen that movie / show, so I can't say.
Oh, well, Columbo was ace because when everything was laid out in front of him and it looked like the villain had got away with everything, he'd walk away, he'd put his hand on his chin and he'd just go, there's just one more thing. And that one question would just unravel everything. And I think that's why me and Alex do this show, because we have the questions, we want questions, so we can ask questions back. And I think that's what we're doing. I'd like to thank you, Taylor and Russ, again for your time giving up time to come on this show and talk about this stuff. I know we're all passionate about our things, but it really is appreciated, guys. So thanks to everybody in the chat room. Another great conversation again today. It's I seem to say every week, but it's been a tough week last week. Been a tough day today. Umming and ahhing whether the show would be able to go ahead tonight or not. But, with the messages that I get, and I think Alex gets as well, that it plays a part to some small extent in people's lives. We get comments that people look forward to the show, and even though they can't always listen to it and watch it live, they catch up on it and they leave comments and send emails and things like that. And it just makes it feel like we're not just all talking to ourselves. So I'd like to thank everybody again, and God willing, we'll see you all next week, guys. Good night. God bless.
Awesome. Have a good one. God
guys.
bless everyone.